All right, great. Thank you for joining us, everybody. As a reminder, we're recording this meeting. Later, we'll post the meeting and the materials to the project website. This is our January 13th, 2022 meeting, and this is the first information session that we've had this year for the Bull Run Treatment Project. My name is Benita, and I am the communications lead for the project. You may recall last year through our Good Neighbor Agreement, we committed to holding meetings at least quarterly. And our last meeting was in September where we provided a design update. Go ahead and change to the next slide, Aubrey. So over the past few months, we have been learning a lot about what is needed for refining this design. So today we'll start things off with a quick program update from Deputy Program Manager, Michelle Teague. And then we'll talk about the pipelines with Ken Ackerman. He's the design lead, and he's going to introduce Joe from the construction team. And Program Manager David Peters will be walking us through upcoming program milestones and a facility design update. We'll then have time at the end to have some public comment. So let's go to the next slide. So for those of you who may be new to our Zoom meetings, we ask that when you're not speaking that you mute your mic and turn off your webcam. We can have a big group today, so this will help us keep things running smoothly for everyone. When you do have something to share though, please use the raise your hand tool or type in the chat and I will pause as appropriate. Let's go to the next slide. So before diving into the update, I want to give quickly note some of the ways that we're sharing information with the community. We will be sending out a printed newsletter to the site neighbors soon about much of this information that we'll be talking about today. But the e-news really is the best way to get timely information to you. So if you haven't yet done so, I encourage you to update your preferences so you can receive the types of news that you're most interested in. You can find the link on our website to update your email preferences or sign up for the e-news. There's also a ton of information about the projects. If you have questions or concerns throughout the project, you can contact me by email or phone. So now I will turn it over to Michelle for the general program update.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Michelle Cheek with the Water Bureau, and tonight we'll be providing updates on 3 projects related to our 2 compliance agreements. These 3 projects will make improvements to the treatment of the Bull Run supply. The first project that will be coming online is the improved corrosion control treatment project, which will reduce lead levels at customers' taps and is required to be online by April of this year. The other 2 projects are the filtration facility and associated pipelines, which are required to be online in 2027. The filtration facility will remove sediments, microbes, and other organic materials from our Bull Run supply. So our improved corrosion control treatment project is currently under construction at our Lusted Hill facility, and we're nearing the end of construction and we'll be beginning startup and commissioning in efforts to get that facility online here in April of 2022. Most of the recent work has been continuing to connect to some of our existing systems at Lusted Hill and get those new systems up and running. The improved corrosion control treatment will use soda ash and carbon dioxide to adjust the chemistry of the Bull Run water and, as I mentioned before, further reduce the potential lead exposure at customers' taps. We're on track to achieve our April 2022 compliance deadline to improve health outcomes. And these are some photos here of our site and our soda ash silos there on the left and carbon dioxide tank being delivered. And here we are in 2022, where we're continuing design of the filtration facility and the pipelines. We'll be submitting our design to OHA in October or the Oregon Health Authority in October of this year, and anticipating starting construction in 2023. And with that, I think, unless there are any questions, I think it's time to turn it over to Ken for a pipeline update.
Pausing a second to see if there's any questions. Okay, so I'm Ken Ackerman with the Portland Water Bureau, and I'm leading the pipeline portion of the filtration program. And probably if we can go to the next slide. So just an overview of the schedule, very similar to what the slide we just saw. Planning was completed in 19 and 20. We started in design in 2021. We have a design consultant that started a year ago, almost to the day. And they were very busy. We were out last spring doing a lot of work in the roads and on private property along the alignments. And then we had some additional information that we just got during field work in November and early December of this year. And then, so we'll continue through design this year and anticipate construction starting next year and then continuing through 2027. So next slide. And I know we have some people here that haven't seen the overall alignments and everything. So I just kind of want to run through those, and there are some changes here from what people have seen in the past. I'll start on the southeast side on our unfiltered water, which is the green on the right side of the picture there. So we'll start at our Hudson facility. We have an existing facility at the south end there. We'll be connecting into that. We'll be running a single pipe from there, crossing Lusted Road and in an easement that we purchased back in the 80s along some private property there, but where we have a 100-foot wide easement. Up north, we'll cross Dodge Park Boulevard and then cross Bear Creek. We'll be boring under Bear Creek, so we won't dig across the creek, but we'll be underneath it and not impacting it. And continue in the easement up to the Multnomah County line, where we will turn to the west, about a 90-degree angle to the west. And that is where we'll meet up with our second pipe that will connect to the existing pipes in Lusted Road. We have all three of our existing pipes that supply water to Portland in Lusted Road at that point. So we'll be connecting into those. The two pipes will become parallel. At that point, we will enter a tunnel. So we'll be digging a tunnel from below or east of Dodge Park Boulevard, under Dodge Park Boulevard up to the filtration facility. And then at the filtration facility, we will have a shaft that we dig straight down, tie into the tunnel, and the pipes will come up onto the filtration site. And so we'll have two pipes. Those will be 72-inch, so 6-foot pipes. They'll be steel, and they'll be buried along here in the range of about 7 feet deep. So then going out, and that alignment hasn't changed since what everybody saw almost a year ago. On the finished water side or the treated water side, leaving the treatment plant, where our current plan is to go directly north out to Dodge Park Boulevard, turn to the west, run both pipes. This will also be two pipes. They'll be 66-inch, a little bit smaller. Run along the south side of Dodge Park Boulevard to a point about 2/3 of the way between Control and Altman, where both pipes will turn north and run straight north to Lusted Road. And this is a change in previous plans people have seen. One of those pipes continued west to Altman Road and went up Altman Road between Dodge Park and Lusted. We changed this because we now have what we call an intertie at Lusted Road, where those two pipes come north. And to make everything work for hydraulics and everything, we combine the location for the intertie. And at that intertie, what will happen is the two pipes will come in and it'll split into 3 pipes to tie into each of the existing conduits at their location. One's in Lusted, one's north at Pipeline, and then one at Oxbow. So that is one change from what people had seen. I think it was about a year ago. It was here and we talked. And then the other change that people hadn't seen is we have the Lusted Road distribution main that feeds a number of wholesalers and customers along Lusted Road. It currently is fed from the Lusted Hill facility back down the hill from there. So we're going to tie into that, and we'll be running up Cottrell Road from the pipes in Dodge Park. So we'll be running a 12-inch pipe along Cottrell Road to the Lusted Hill facility, and then down the hill to tie back into that, and then that will continue to run down Lusted Road back to the east. So those are the 2 big changes from last time. So with that, the next slide, we are going to introduce Joe Cecil. We have hired our contractor, our CMGC, it's Bull Run Conveyance Partners, and Joe Cecil is leading their effort and just actually got a signed contract today. So Joe is just on board. So, but we thought we'd bring him, have him introduce himself and the company a little bit, and then he will be back in April to talk more once he gets up to speed on what the project is. So Joe, with that, I'll introduce you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it. And good evening, everybody. As Ken said, my name is Joe Cecil. I'm the pre-construction manager as part of the Bull Run Conveyance Partners. As Ken referenced, we're the CMGC on the project for the Bull Run Pipeline project. Excited to be joined as part of the program and part of the team. And as Ken said, we just had a signed contract this morning, so we're just starting and just getting involved. Our first task is the pre-construction effort, and that's working really closely with the program team and all the work that they've done to date, along with the design team, of focus on safety and constructability and minimizing disturbance and impact to the community is a big focus. We're working on how we're going to sequence the project, traffic control associated with the project, and preparing our overall construction management plan to essentially put all the procedures and process in place before we move into construction in 2023. And our focus in pre-construction is to have a successful, safe construction project that reduces and minimizes any impact to the community, any negative disturbances. So excited to be part of the team and excited to be working with everybody on it. So.
And with that, we will pause and see if there's any questions on the pipeline portion. All right, I believe Dave is up next. Program update, the facility update.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Glad to be here with you in this new year. And I have the opportunity to talk a little bit about what's been happening with the filtration facility itself. And we'll go to the next slide. And over the past year, we have been talking to you about the design that's been moving forward. And I think, as Benita mentioned, back in September, we brought some graphics of how that's been moving forward. We're continuing to understand what we need to do to be able to place this facility here. And one of the things I'll be talking about tonight is the land use process that we'll need to go through in both Multnomah and Clackamas counties. And at the same time, we'll be working through the land use. We're working on our design for a submission to the Oregon Health Authority to meet our October of 2022 design compliance milestones. So I'll talk a little bit more about those items this evening. Next slide. So first off is talking a little bit about the Multnomah County land use permitting process. And there's this is a public process that we'll be going through, and there's several key steps that we need to go through as part of that process. The first one will be a pre-application conference that we'll be doing with the county. I'll talk about that in a minute and what that entails and what we hope to get out of that and when that will happen. Once the pre-application conference takes place, within I believe it's 6 months of the pre-application conference, we need to submit a land use application. The county then does a review of that application, and once it determines it's complete, it goes through a process of accepting public comment on the application, and also goes through public hearings, and ultimately getting to the point that a hearings officer will hear the merits of our case and any public comments and render a decision on whether we've appropriately met all the criteria to place our facility at this site. And so this will be the process for you, the public, to be able to come in and have comment and input into what we plan to build at this site. So next slide. So that pre-application conference is an opportunity for us, the Water Bureau, to hear from the county about the applicable policies and standards that we'll need to meet to be able to construct on this site. So there's a zoning designation for the site, and it has criteria laid out that we need to meet. And this will be our opportunity to hear from them about that. And so what we need to do when we request that conference is we need to put together a description of the project. We need to provide a facility site plan, and those plans would show, the proposed structures and roadways. So much of the stuff that we've been showing over the last several meetings with you are the types of things that will be part of that pre-application conference. Next slide. So the pre-application conference is the first step. And I'm going to go through a couple of slides now that kind of give you an overview of what that site plan is intended to look like as we go to that pre-application conference. So we continue to refine the facility design. We've talked the last couple of meetings how we're working with kind of a rolling hills feel, where we're using asymmetrical roof lines to try to mimic the environment out there with the rolling hills of the environment. To the extent that we can, we're working to keep our structures as low profile as we can. And there are limitations in the zoning of this area that need to be met also. We'll be under those criteria. We're working to use muted earth tones as the materials and the colors for the facilities, again, so that it kind of blends with the environment out there. And then we're going to be using landscaping and berms and stormwater facilities in a way to kind of make it a more natural environment to kind of screen our facilities. And over the next couple slides, I'll be able to show a little bit more about what that will look like. This is a high-level overview to give a feel for some of those things that we're doing to reduce the visual impact of our facilities. Maybe starting on the right-hand side, which in this photo is looking to the west, where it talks about plantings and berms. We do plan to raise that area as a way to screen the facilities. So we'll have some berms, and then we'll have landscaping on top of those. And over time, the landscaping will continue to provide additional screening of the facilities. I'm going to move to the left and the main entry. One of the things we've done there with the main entry, we continue with the screening theme as we're coming up Carpenter Lane to the entrance. The entrance will be set back. The gates to our facility will be 150 feet off of Carpenter Lane. So there's room for vehicles to come in and get off the main road. And our facility won't be highly visible from that main road. Continuing around now to the east side, we've talked about a communication tower being on this site. We've placed that tower close to the trees. And as we as we move that closer to the trees, other towers we've had, we know we'll have requirements to paint the tower in colors that will be consistent with the darker muted tones of the landscape also, so that it will blend in. Continuing to the top, over time, I think we've talked about the fact that we've been working to make this campus as compact as we can to complete the functions that we need. So the main portion of the site there is using about half of the acreage that we have on our site. So we've been working to keep that compact. And then as we move around to the back, and actually where it talks about stormwater improvements, that's kind of where there's dark green around the site. Many of the stormwater patterns will continue to flow in the directions that they have in the past. And our intent will be to continue to do that going forward. As we've mentioned in the past, this will be a zero liquid discharge facility, so none of the water from our treatment processes will be going into any of the natural drainage ways, but the stormwater will continue to flow as it has. On the next slide, we have a couple of views of how this will look from the edges of our property. So the top half of this slide is looking from the west property line towards the east. So on the right-hand side, you'll see the two green tanks, which are the Pleasant Home Water District tanks, which are currently there. And then basically in the front of you, you'll see the berming and the landscaping that will be visible from that point of view. As you kind of go scan across that horizon, there's a couple white buildings kind of in the middle there. Those will be the soda ash silos that will be part of our treatment process. And then you can see the tower kind of blending up against the trees in the middle of the site. And then the lower view is looking from the east property line back towards the west. And in this particular picture, the Pleasant Home Water District tanks would be on the left-hand side behind the tree that's in the front there. And as you scan across, you can kind of see just the roof lines of the buildings. You see the white soda ash silos and again, the communications tower blending up against the trees. Next slide. So this is an overview to just, I guess, provide a reminder of the road system around our facility in this area. As we get into operations of our facility, it's likely that we'll have elements and be using all of these roads at some point in time. But our primary access will be from Dodge Park to Cottrell to Carpenter Lane. And we'll share some more of that here in the next couple slides. So the top portion of this slide is as we're driving east on Carpenter Lane from Cottrell Road, and as we're approaching our west property boundary, and you're looking off to the right-hand side, this is likely what you would see. Pleasant Home Water District tanks off to the far right, some of the roof lines as we're going forward. The view in the corner is basically standing on that northwest corner of our property, looking into the property. So that's standing at ground level, looking in. And the berms won't look like they're step graded like this. This is just a visual artifact of our modeling of this at this point in time. It'll be more rolling hills looking, as I discussed earlier. Next slide. So this is coming in off of Carpenter Lane. We showed the overview of that driveway and the gate being 150 feet back from the road. This is what that would look like if we're standing on Carpenter Lane, looking towards the entrance of our facility. Again, using landscape to visually get the property to blend in. And when you're at ground level, as the landscaping ages and grows, it'll blend even further. So, next slide. And finally, this is one looking from Bluff Road, which is to the south, looking to the north. And you get a prominent view of the Pleasant Home Water District tanks there, the green tanks, and our facilities are off to the left of that facility. So we're working hard to find ways to get this to fit into the nature and the feel of the neighborhood and not be too much of a visual impact. And next slide. So I discussed briefly when I showed the road view that we'll have our primary access will be coming in off of Dodge Park Boulevard onto Southeast Cottrell and then on to Carpenter Lane. And then our access will be directly into the facility there off of Carpenter Lane. We do plan to have a secondary access to the south, to Bluff Road. That will be if something happens on Carpenter Lane or it's closed for any reason, that we have a way in and out. There's and as a backup for any other types of emergency access or anything like that that might need to be made. The secondary access is just that. All of our operations will come in off of the primary access, and that will be where employees and deliveries will be had. The secondary access is really just in times of need when there's something else happening on Carpenter Lane. So this is the kind of the overview of what we're thinking about for access. We're still working on, and we can go to the next slide as I'm talking about this. We're still working on the designs of those facilities. So the exact locations are still being worked out as we're talking with property owners and the counties about where those intersections will be, both at property lines and at the existing roads. So we're doing ongoing communications with those property owners to work out those details. We're working with Multnomah County specifically on intersection details and the roadway standards within Carpenter Lane and what they'll require for the driveways into our site. We'll be working within the right-of-ways within Carpenter Lane and Cottrell and Dodge Park Boulevard. So we aren't anticipating the need for any new property acquisition along those boundaries. And as we mentioned earlier, we have our contractors on board now, so we'll be working closely with them as we're thinking about the traffic controls and how we work to provide access for you as local residents and emergency access during construction. And we're committed to coming back next month and talking, or not next month, but our next meeting in April to talk in more detail about those construction thoughts and how we'll keep your neighborhood safe as we're going through construction. So all of this is continuing work that we're doing to work out the details of these accesses. So, and really that is the presentation that we had for this evening in terms of updates for the different elements of our program. And at this point, we will open it up to questions and see what we may be able to provide to answer your questions.
Yeah. So David, I'm going to start with, there's a question or a statement from the Walters that's in the chat, and I'll just read it. It says, Dean and I are extremely disappointed regarding the recent discussion we had with PWB rep. We were informed that the secondary access road to and from the property line on the eastern border of the proposed plant. During construction, the neighbors and residents of Carpenter Lane will have to deal with a large number of vehicles on the access roads, according to the Bull Run Filtration update regarding the facility site access. The secondary access from the south is very vague. We would like to meet with those involved and with this decision to show us exactly where the secondary access was chosen. They're in their 70s and they feel as if they are part of the collateral damage. So do you want to respond to that question? They don't have audio right now, so they'll have to listen to your response later.
Yeah, we will be, we would like to meet with you and talk in more details about that. And as I mentioned, we're still working with property owners to the south to understand where we can put, where we'll locate the road and the details of that road. And we're working with our contractors to understand how they're going to use the site during construction. And that's all information we're collecting now, and love to come and sit down with all the property owners to talk through those details and work through any concerns that you have.
Thanks, David. Mr. Leathers also wrote something in the chat, and it says, based on your descriptions of the secondary access, it sounds like the construction vehicles will use Carpenter Lane. Is that correct?
Yes, they will.
Did you have a follow-up question with that, Mr. Leathers? You can jump in. You don't have to type in the chat.
And that's where they will be using that, and that's where we're working with the contractors now that we have them under contract to figure out what that means. You know, how many trucks there will be, how we plan to keep those intersections safe and traffic moving smoothly, and to work with the property owners in those areas. So we'll be spending more time with the property owners as we go through that to talk through those types of details with you.
I have a question from Mr. Medler, who asks, are you going to buy American procurement terms included in the CMGC contract?
Yes, we do have Buy American procurement requirements through the American Iron and Steel Act. And that is also part of our financing through the EPA. So those will be elements of our project. Especially for the large steel and iron procurement.
Yeah, kind of question from Mrs. Fiedler asking if you will be widening Carpenter Lane.
So we will be working with the county to figure out the details of that. But what we believe will be happening for that section of Carpenter Lane that's east of Cottrell is that we will need to widen the pavement. So the right-of-way is wide enough, but we'll need to widen the pavement for the construction activities that we have. So yeah, those are, and how wide and the layout of all that is yet to be worked out as we work with the county more closely on the road design standards.
And Pat M., did you have a question you wanted to say or ask?
I didn't want to know about that. You said that there is a right-of-way there. What is the size of it?
Maybe
I mean, in other words,
yeah, I believe.
And I realize you haven't determined exactly how wide you're going to make Carpenter, but what could you? I mean, what is the size of your right-of-way?
Ken, do you have an answer for me?
It's 60 feet starting at Cottrell going south. I believe it's at our property line. It does drop down to 40 feet, but from our property line to Cottrell, it's the right of way 60 feet wide.
When you say 40 to 60, that would be like 20 or 30 on each side? Or you?
So it drops down. I know it gets narrower at our property line. I don't know if it drops on both sides or on one side or the other, but I know it gets narrower there.
And Pat, I don't know that we can answer whether that's based on the center line of the existing pavement or not. I'm not sure if that existing pavement's in the center of the right of way or not. So if that's the question you're asking, I don't know that we have that.
Yeah, I guess what I think people would want to know is, in the worst case scenario, how wide could Carpenter become? And how much land would be taken off of their front yards?
Right, and the county's roadway standards have a wide range on them. So we need to talk to them to get exactly, and that's part of that pre-application meeting, is determining that, because it's not, they have a wide range for each travel lane and shoulders and stuff. So we're working to figure out exactly what they would want us to put in, because they have the final say.
Okay, well, thank you. I know this doesn't have to do with the design or anything, but now that there's quite a 7% inflation, how is that affecting your proposed budget? Are you still within the guidelines?
We are still within our budget, although that's something we're evaluating every day as we go through it.
And so right now, what are you evaluating it at?
Pardon me?
What are you evaluating it at today? Are you past 1 billion? Are you past 1.2 billion? Where are you at?
So our financing package that we have for the program is the $1.48 billion that we've shared at the previous meetings, and so we're still within that budget.
Okay, and then and I'm going to leave you. I'm going to give other people an opportunity. But at one time, because I realized that you did get some financing, some low interest long-term financing. At that time, I believe it was only for 50% of what the cost of this project would be. And I did ask a couple of years ago where you were going to get the rest of that money. And you said it would be from the rate payers. I'm sorry, you get from the rate payers. And then also you didn't know, you were a little bit hesitant on how else you would come up with that extra money. So tell me, what is your plan now that you're so close to construction?
Mm-hmm. Well, the financing covers the 49%, and then that gets factored into rates. So what the financing does for us is helps us keep rates.
So what you're saying is that you have at least, well, I'm just going to give you a break here and say you're only going to spend $1 billion. So in other words, you have over $500 million that you don't have yet, right? Because you only have a loan of 500 million plus. Mm-hmm. Do I have that straight?
So that is correct. We collect that as we go forward. And there is other bonding that we do or I guess what you're asking then is typically we'll sell bonds locally as a way to fund the other portion. And then rates we use to pay
what
back.
You're telling me in this economic climate right now that you think people would be willing to buy municipal bonds? Is that what you think?
So I would need to get my finance person in to talk to you in more detail about.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry I took so long, but thank you for the answers.
You're welcome.
All righty then. So we have a couple more questions in the chat. I'm just going to go through with who's come up first here. And so next is Mrs. Hart. She says, this is an urban industrial land use is being proposed for a rural area when it's intended to benefit urban area controlled by Portland. Know that there's a question there, so I'm just going to keep going. What is the right-of-way from Patricia, but we've already talked about that. Jeffrey Kleinman, you want to speak?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm an attorney in Portland. I represent Brent and Linda Leathers. Brent asked a question earlier, and I just want to explain that we have monitored this entire process from the time we became aware of the site selection process, which we thought, especially in the final round, was highly flawed. We've monitored the design effort here and would acknowledge that some concessions have been made in order to make the physical facility fit in a bit better. But just to be clear, the switch of the traffic onto Carpenter Lane is entirely unacceptable. That is where the Leathers live, within sight and sound of the facility, of the site. And we're certainly going to fight that hammer and tongue. The gauntlet has really been thrown down on that. That is a sudden switcheroo. Perhaps you can explain it a little bit, what the negotiation or discussion with Multnomah County has been, but that switch is absolutely unacceptable to my clients.
Okay. That is something that we have been working on since early in our process. And I know we talked with the site advisory group about that extensively as we went through our good neighbor process. And we did look at a series of options. And I think folks recognize that we were looking at options for coming off of Dodge Park Boulevard and had purchased property along those lines also. But what we found is, as we got into the details of the county rules for the road access, is that we were not going to meet the requirements that they have for obtaining a variance to come off a road that's different than the smallest access road that comes to your property. And I know I didn't use the right words. Others might be able to help me out with that.
Yeah, that's okay. I understand what you're saying. I think you may really want to revisit those issues with Multnomah County because Mr. Leathers has a pretty long history of involvement in land use cases that have gone up through the appellate courts. And we're quite willing to take on the land use review of this project.
I understand. And we are open to continuing to talk about all that with the county.
Highly advisable, in my opinion, anyway.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
All right. Move to the next question from Christy. Why not use the secondary access road for construction? This would be way less of a disruption for the residents on Carpenter Lane.
Well, it may be, and these are things that are still being looked at. We may need to use both accesses for construction. And that's what our contractors will help us determine. And yeah, Carpenter, that would be less disruption for Carpenter Lane residents, but more disruption for the residents along that south boundary. And there are a handful over there also. So there are trade-offs here that we're having to work through. And we are committed to try to work through those in a way that minimizes the impacts to all those affected to the extent that we can.
Right, Pat M says the road is falling apart already from trucks. What are your plans to bring it back to a usable road to this build?
Those are details that we're working out with the county. They have roadway standards, and it's likely that, especially on Carpenter Lane, that we'll have to do some improvement before we get construction started. And then we'll have to maintain and ensure that's complete when we're finished with the project also. So that those details will be working out with the county as we get into more detail about the section of that road.
Jennifer asks, what is your budget? And I think you've covered that earlier with questions from Patricia. So we'll move on to Mr. Leathers, who says immense quantities of soil will be removed and similarly aggregate materials hauled to the site. There are typically moved using dump trucks with long tongue trailers. These truck vehicles will be making tight 90-degree turn on Dodge Park Boulevard onto Cottrell, then again on Cottrell to Carpenter Lane. Can you speak to the means of making the movement safe and efficient?
So I'm not a traffic engineer or designer. Ken, could I ask if you have any thoughts on this topic?
So we have been evaluating that. We're using a program called AutoTurn. It runs different vehicles. It takes those turning movements. And so far we've looked at that with the vehicles, and we're still looking at it with the contractors to make sure we cover all of their vehicles. But right now we're looking at both Dodge Park and Cottrell, and then Cottrell and Carpenter, and looking at movements and movements happening at the same time, going in and out of the site and making sure that those can be safe. We've been talking through that with the county as well. So we are looking at it. We're looking at it with different size vehicles to make sure that all of them can get through there without getting outside of the improvements that are done and exactly what those improvements are. So I don't know if that answered the question or not, but we are evaluating what that would mean.
Okay, I'm going to take a little break from the chat. I do see that Ms. Hart had a question about rates. I'm just going to type in the chat the web page that has the information about the rates and how this project impacts rates. But hands raised, we have Elle McFarland. You're on mute. You're still there? Right, let's move to Pat Holt.
Hello, everybody. Couple questions. One, what is the property currently zoned? Is it still EFU right now?
So our property is currently zoned MUA 20.
MUA 20? Okay. And then, David, have you been out to the property lately?
No. No. I was out there in December. Not lately, as in this year, I guess.
Not since the swimming hole was dug, I take it.
I've seen that.
What are you going to do to deal with the runoff? I mean, I was told that there was no water supposed to leave the property, but unfortunately right now it's flowing through me and multiple others, but I'm the first one that has to deal with it. And it's a lot of water. Is DEQ going to get involved at some point with this, or how are you going to mitigate all this stuff?
So that what we're still doing our testing to understand, the water impacts out in that area. The water that is on that site, the stormwater on that site, has historically in that area drained towards your property and across your property. And so those are things that we're looking at and need to consider as we're going forward. And that's why we have our folks taking a look at this and what we're going to do. They've been meeting regularly to talk about the next steps and how this impacts our design going forward. So we'll be talking to you in more detail.
So in the meantime, I just have to deal with it, and the washouts through my roads, and it's going through Brent's property and multiple others down the line before it hits Johnson Creek. So yeah, at some point in time, other than just the traffic and whether this is even going to pass through land use planning, I mean, maybe in the short term, it should be a little more vocal with talking with the neighbors versus than just throwing a meeting out like this once in a while.
Okay. Well, let me circle back with you and we can talk about that in some more detail and talk about what's going on and what your full impacts are.
All right.
We'll give you a call.
Okay, so then next is Ms. Chris. He's a couple questions in here. So I'll just start with Oregon law. Land use law is intended to keep urban uses in urban areas. Why is the public industrial use being pushed into an obviously rural area? I'll start with that question.
So this is not an industrial use. This is a community service under the MUA 20 zoning that allows for community service. Our water system has been 25 miles out of Portland for 125 years now. And, part of this area and this community during that time. And we serve many of the residents out in this area, all the way from Sandy on into Gresham and Rockwood, and then before it even gets into Portland. So this is a community service that provides water to nearly 1/4 of the state of Oregon, and this area is zoned appropriately to have a facility of this type there. So that's why we're heading this direction.
Okay, part 2 of this question is, why is the public industrial use not being placed at Powell Butte, a site considered earlier?
We have a lot of documentation on our website that talks about the site selection, and I think it would be best for me to maybe point you to reviewing that material. A couple of the key points are, one I just mentioned is the zoning. The other is this site also allows us to maintain the gravity flow into Portland, so without having to pump the water to get it into town with our residents. So that's a big benefit in terms of resilience for our system.
I'm going to put that link to that document in the chat. Let's see, next question is, spending hundreds of millions of dollars to build transmission pipes to reach a rural site is not fiscally responsible. Building this facility in a rural area seems obviously intended to avoid public opposition in Portland by placing the facility in an area where there's less opposition. Is that the reason for this location? And I think David already kind of talked about that just a minute ago, and we've, as I mentioned, I put the reason this site was selected in the preferred alternatives report in the chat if you're interested in taking a look through that. Let's see here, some questions. Pat M says we need holes filled ASAP. McFarland makes a comment about a question, why is lead in customer tap water so alarmingly high? Why so-called corrosion control treatment facility will fix your problem? And I'm just going to go ahead and answer that one here, because we want to stay focused on the purpose of this meeting, which is the filtration project. And I know the commissioner is setting up a forum about lead. I know this is a big concern, not just for you, but for others too. And so I encourage anybody that has questions about lead to attend to that forum and look out for that, because this is, we're really wanting to try to stay focused on the issues that I know the neighbors here are concerned about. Next up, Patricia Fiedler says, is Gresham and Rockwood renewing their contract with the PWB?
So that one, I don't know the specific answer. And I may need to go back and ask our finance folks. So I don't have the answer on that at this point.
Okay. Jennifer Hart says the website link has old project numbers and the cost of the plant. It does not talk about anything about 1.4 billion. Be informed transparently. Let's see. I will take a look at this website and I can touch base with you later, but I'm pretty sure it's up to date. I will look more detail to that. Anybody else? Okay, looking for some hands. All right, well, I think this timing is good. We have 4 minutes left, and so I will just say that we have another meeting coming up as promised, quarterly. So that's going to be April 14th, 2022. That's a couple months from now. And if you want to stay up to date on our projects, please do sign up for our e-newsletters. You can find construction updates on our web page as well. There's a link on the website. And then if you have additional questions, you can email me or send or call me. All my information is on everything. We have one more question from Mr. Haas. Since we have 3 minutes, I'll just go ahead and bring that one up, David, if you're still there. You haven't disappeared. And let's see, water treatment plants are by ORS definition of public industrial use. Water source from the Bull Run so far is different from the new treatment plants far as being in the area for 125 years. The previous answer was gaslighting at best. What is the cost of building a new transmission and pipelines pumping capacity to reach Palbute's site? I don't even know if we know that. David, do we know that?
No, we don't have all of those answers. What we do know, what the pipelines do for us though, is improves, in addition to getting to the new site, it's also improving a section of pipes that are 100 years old, between 60 and 100 years old. So we're improving our resilience and building those new pipes to the higher seismic standards that we have today. So there's benefits beyond just the work to get to the treatment facility that we're doing with this facility.
All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up for the night. If you have additional questions, please give me a call or you can send me an email. We have a lot of information on our website. I'll be looking into the affordability webpage, make sure that's up to date. And I hope you all have a great evening.